I come in peace.
I come in peace.
And you go in pieces, I hear.
Everybody, welcome back. Another episode of the Arrow and the Head Show. Of course, that makes me Lance, Mr. John Fallon, and you might notice a third person back once again, our old friend, Mr. Matthias Hues. Sir, I'm glad you are joining us. How are you doing?
Thank you so much. And as always, I come in peace.
I come in peace. I come in peace. I come in peace.
And you go in pieces, I hear.
Absolutely. Always.
I know everybody always talks to you about I Come in Peace, but I want to talk about your newest film, which is totally going back to the 80s in terms of soundtrack, actors, even the font that they use for the title, which is from Bloodsport. I'm talking about the Last Kumite. Last Kumite. Tell us about it, please, because it looks like a present to all children of the 80s. That's for sure.
Thank you. And it's a very interesting story because all of that happened through a similar situation that we are having right now. I did a interview podcast with a person called Sean Lowe. Sean Lowe has a very famous basketball channel, big, 600,000 subscribers. And he kind of wanted to branch out and started interviewing actors from the 80s and 90s. So I was one of the first. And we started talking, and he ended up saying, you know what? Someone's got to do another 80, 90 Bloodsport, no retreat, no surrender, kickboxer film. And I said, yeah, well, why don't you do it? And he said, yeah, okay. So literally, he was thinking, and he hung up, and then he suddenly called me, and he sends me a treatment. He says, you know what? I'm going to do it. I sell my house. I have some money and I'm going to produce this movie. And I try to talk him out of it because, you know, it's like I said, this is the worst thing you can do. Never put up your own money. This is a shitty I mean, it's a wonderful business, but if you're not in the business, it's a suicide mission, right? He wasn't to be talked out of it. And about literally 3-4 weeks later, he had a script. I was like, oh my God, he's for real. So I started thinking, okay, let me get everybody involved that I know. I mean, I can't stop him. He's crazy. I don't know what to do. He's going to do it. So I contacted everybody I know, Cynthia, Billy Blanks, so many people. Out of that entire 80-90 group, we approached pretty much everybody, and not everybody responded. But he managed to get Eloise, and he asked me how much do everybody gets paid. And I said, everybody has to get paid the same amount of money because they're all 80-90 legends, and we agreed all on a price, and everybody got the same. So this was out of the way. So what happened is he needed a little bit more money, and we were thinking, let's raise the money through our social networks, meaning, like the Viking Samurai, it is so bad, it's good, that channel. Oliver Harper, who was the producer of The Last Action Heroes, right? Like, let's make this a real fan-based movie. Even have the fans invest into it. So hence the Kickstarter campaign. It turned out through the promotion of all the social network people, not only that it's so bad, it's good, became one of the people very heavily involved. He flew down, he was there for the whole shoot. He interviewed all us. So we did interviews. It was a very hands-on, fan-on experiment because the people came from all around the world, invested in that movie, and were actually in the movie as well. I know Cynthia is doing the same thing, but we kind of like did it first, so to speak. And it was an incredible experience. We had fans from all around the world flying in on their own dime, paying money on top of it. They were part of the movies. Some were fighters. A lot of them were with us for a week. It turned out to be incredibly interesting. We actually gave a role to David, who runs Viking Samurai. He's one of the leads in the movie. So, you know, we involved everybody that is a fan into the new remake, so to speak, of the 80-90s, you know, plus the old guys like me, Billy Blanks, Cynthia Rothrock, Michelle Tucci, Kurt McKinney, and then a German action star, Mathilde Landwehr, a French stunt woman, Monia, that does all the big A movies. You know, she has a major role. So it just grew, and we hired the DP for Undisputed, Kickboxer, Retaliation. I mean, a guy that shot like 60 movies, the 80s, 90s style. And he's also the director. So it literally, the music, everything is 80s. Fans, everything.
Well, you have Paul, forgive my pronunciation of his name, Paul Herzog, who scored Bloodsport and Kickboxer doing the soundtrack. You have Stan Bush, who did the song for Bloodsport and Transformers, the movie, doing the theme song, I guess.
Yes. Yes, it's literally not only that it's going to sound like it, it's going to look like it too. We filmed with the old lenses, you know, even though it's digital, but it's going to look like a film. Long lenses from the cameras, the 35 millimeter camera lenses, you know. It was a hell of an experience. I had no idea how many fans from the 80s, 90s are still out there wanting these type of films that are very, I mean, story-driven. The story wasn't yet now extraordinary or anything like that. It's, you know, like Bloodsport, like all the other Kumite films, just the same.
Well, I'm actually curious because, you know, you were in some of the original films of that type, like No Retreat, No Surrender 2, Kickboxer 2, and you were a young man, you know, doing those fight scenes. Now you're an older gentleman doing those fight scenes.
I'm literally, it was agreed upon that none of us would be in the tournament, except Kurt McKinney from No Retreat, No Surrender, which is an interesting choice because he's also 50, but he's very young looking and handsome, and he's a Taekwondo guy, so he could do a really great job. Billy Blanks, Cynthia, and I were not fighting, but Cynthia is a trainer and Billy Blanks is a trainer, and these training sequences are incredible. There's a lot of philosophy, fighting philosophy. You know, it's like the old guard is training the new ones to be what they used to be. It's fantastic. And I myself, I'm the bad guy. I mean, I play this.
Of course you are.
You will not even recognize me. I choose a completely different style. So yeah, it's a whole new thing for me because the director let me do it. So think about more like a cult leader that is completely insane. And I have the big final fight with Billy Blanks.
Oh, nice. So you do fight in the film?
Yeah.
Okay, thank God. Because you got me scared there for a second.
And it was a tough one. It was the longest fight of the movie. It was the end fight, and it was outside, and it was that was about 100 degrees, so it's like pretty rough. 8 hours, you know. Billy is amazing. I mean, he's 67. It's like Billy, like never is the same. He looks the same. He fights the same. You know.
Can I ask you? You're saying so it's an 8-hour day. It's going to obviously turn out to be a smaller amount. Of course, with editing, I understand how that works. How long does it take for, obviously, if you had the longest fight in the movie, to choreograph something like that?
Yeah, we did it exactly how we did it in the 80s and 90s. So this was not like, let's do a fight scene. Let's see what we're going to do today. This was prepared month ahead of time. All stunt guys were, all previs, we call that previs. So it was shot prior to the film with stunt people. And then we get the tape at home. And we look at all the fight scenes, right? And memorize it. So when we get to the set, because all of us are professional fighters, so to speak, in films, but some were real, some were for real. You have it memorized, and then you shoot it, you know? Yeah. And Mike Miller is the stunt coordinator. He's done fight coordinator. So it's unbelievable. I mean, the fights are great. They're not much different than Bloodsport or anything because we're not reinventing the wheel, right?
Any movie that has you throwing hands, you know, makes me happy. So
there's another movie coming up. There's so many movies coming up. We are prepping a movie that every single 80s guys is going to be in it. It's done in Malta from this director Ross Boyack. I mean, I have in that movie the big fight with Lauren Avedon for No Retreat, No Surrender Part 2. We're gonna fight each other again.
Man,
it's a retro wave. I'm telling you, it's going up.
I mean, that's 3 movies you're telling me, and 3 of them, well, 2 of them actually for sure are like retro. My theory is we keep going backwards because the present sucks.
I think so too, yeah. I mean, I didn't see Barbie, I have to tell you that.
So, you know,
yeah,
because it was just a better quality of life, in my opinion, a simpler time, a more innocent time.
So. I miss it so much. I just watched the Whitney Houston movie, and when she sang the national anthem at the football game in 1992, I was like, 1991, I think, America was still like dudes and national pride and football and beer and sausages. But I think people will wake up because, I mean, look at the films that we do right now. People embrace it, right? You know, you just interviewed Thomas Jane, and Thomas Jane is he's almost 80, 90s guy, you know. Bruce Campbell, one of my favorite ones. You should hopefully get to interview him, you know. We're not only talking about martial art movies, we're talking about other movies too, right? Punisher or The Night of the Living Dead and all that stuff, you know.
Well, actually, I want to end off on this. You know, a lot of celebrities, you know, they get known for a role and they get aggravated by it. The fact that you have one character that will live forever, for me, is a huge accomplishment.
The only regret I have is that we never did part 2. That really bothers me. Okay, the character died, but there was something magic, you know, you don't want it to end. I mean, Arnold got to do Terminator 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. At least 3 more. Rocky got to do, I'm not saying I'm like them, but I Come in Peace on its own was kind, you know, it's a cultural hit. And I like Dolph so much, you know. I think he was fantastic. I think he's even better now. And if there would be, it would almost be a classic reunion to do this again while we're now older, you know. But it may never happen, so I'm not going to complain about it. You know, I usually don't do this, but I printed this out to remind myself because I keep forgetting. You know what I mean? I felt like, no, print it, hang it on the wall, because that's something that was the most important role of my life, you know?
And it's still, to this day, people on our web, or YouTube page, I should say, me and John were just talking, people like, oh my gosh, have you guys talked about I Come in Peace? And we're like, well, we have.
I'm glad we finished it on that note, because I Come in Peace was my favorite movie to do. It's unbelievable to be in a movie like this where it seemed so real. And that's bringing us back to the 80s, 90s. It was real back then. The director, famous stunt director, said, listen, Greg Baxley, one of my favorite people, said, you're going to have to do this stuff for real.
Yeah, they didn't have anybody to double you.
No, one guy, that big fall out of the window after I am on fire and this and that. Eventually that switched over to a stuntman who was in Houston, Gary. He was 6'3", very heavy. But I would have broken my neck because that was a very high fall. I was allowed to do everything but that. You know what I mean?
Your stunt running over the hoods of the cars as it blows up behind you will always be, in my opinion, one of the fucking most amazing stunts I've ever seen.
Yeah, and I did it blind too, so.
Yes, with the contacts, yeah.
I want to say something. That's only thanks to, I took my wife today, Leslie, to the track and field where I started out, track and field, right? And I was a high jumper, and I showed her, I said, you have to see this in person, how high this is, what I used to jump, you know, at the bar onto the mat. You have to see it because you're not going to believe it. So we went there and I showed her how high it is, and I realized how high it is. I'm like, how did I ever jump over it? But literally incredibly high. But that's why I got the role, because Greg Baxley said, if you can jump, you're going to get that role.
Matthias has really an amazing book. It kept me sane during the pandemic. It's called Shirtless in Hollywood. And it's basically, you know, his childhood and so forth. But the most interesting part for me is his crazy ass stories in Hollywood, you know, Russian mobsters showing up on Kingdom of Heaven set. It's really highly entertaining and honest book about the business. Shirtless in Hollywood. Check it out. I really highly recommend it. So thank you so much.
All right.
Thank you so much for having me back.
And you go in pieces, asshole.
welcome to the end screen. Because we have our most popular videos up here, our latest videos over here, our modern reviews up here, and of course, the subscribe button right here, guys. Every little bit counts, and we do appreciate the support.